Hello book friends, I'm Allie, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be wrapping up all the books that I read in January, and I didn't exactly meet the goal that I was hoping to meet, but I did read quite a bit more than I actually expected to read, considering I had kind of a hectic month. So let's get to it. The first book I finished that carried over from the end of December was The 12 Days of Dash and Lily. This was actually a reread for me. I rated it 5 stars. I think I've already talked about this one. I love this story. I know that a lot of people didn't like this one as a continuation from the first one because the first one was a lot more lighthearted and this one had a lot more not lighthearted themes. It was a bit heavier, and for that reason a lot of people rate it kind of low, but I felt like it was very down to earth. It was very realistic, and that's what I loved about it, was that she was dealing with depression. She was dealing with going through family problems, and she was dealing with trying to figure out who she was as like a senior coming out of high school and not really knowing her place in the world. And I think that it's very realistic look at a high schooler who went through some trauma and who was just trying to figure out her way and also figure out her place in her family, because her family can be very overbearing. So as far as the story goes, yes, it is a little bit more sad than the first one, but it does have funny moments, and I love the fact that Dash does everything in his power to try to take care of Lily as she's going through all of these different life problems. So if you're looking for something that's more realistic and not just a fluffy read, this is so good, because to me, it was very real. The next book that I actually started and finished in January was Mind the Gap, Dash and Lily. This book just recently came out in December or January. I can't remember for sure which. But I picked it up, actually, it might have been November. Anyway, that's not important. I picked this up after I finished all of my reread of the other 2 books, and I read this in like a day because I couldn't put it down. I absolutely loved it. This is set in London because Dash is going to school in London, and Lily decides to surprise him around Christmas time and go visit him in London, and it's about them kind of just running headlong into each other, trying to figure out their lives after high school. They are both, well, Dash is in college and Lily's trying to figure out if she wants to go to school. They're trying to figure out how their relationship is going to continue to grow, or if it needs to continue to grow. And they have a lot of real talk in this book, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoy their dynamic, I enjoy their relationship, and I really enjoyed being with them again during the Christmas season, and also some new eccentric characters that were introduced, and just the whole entire thing. I just loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I think that these books are wonderful. That might not be a popular opinion for the second and third book, because I think that a lot of people just really love the first book, but I think as a series, and seeing these 2 people grow together in a very real way, I really enjoyed it, because they do discuss themes that are real to, real life, and it's not just set off in, fantasy land. It's actual real conversations about how to react to relationships and how to make your relationship flourish, or how to let go if you need to. It's all very human, and I think that that is a fantastic thing for a fiction book. So I love this, and if you happen to like the Dash and Lily series, you should definitely check this one out too. The next book I read was actually a Christmas gift from my little brother, and that is The Alchemist by Michael Scott. I rated this 4 stars. I really enjoyed this. This is a middle grade fantasy story. It follows 2 siblings, a brother and a sister who are twins, and they get immediately wrapped up into some crazy magic shenanigans right from the beginning. And Nicholas Flamel is the main character in this story, and his wife Purnell. And then you have John Dee, who is a scientist. He's trying to get his hands on the book of Abraham the Mage, which is, I think, also referenced as the Codex, and they are trying to escape him, and it's just It reminds me a lot of a child's version of American Gods by Neil Gaiman. So if you have read American Gods by Neil Gaiman and you enjoyed it, this is a lot like that. There are old gods that they go and visit, and there are hidden witches and magic elements all throughout this world. Well, it's set in the real world. It's in California, I believe, San Francisco, and they are like traveling through California. They are going to different places. They are visiting with different magical beings. They are running from bad guys. The whole entire story is very fast paced. It is very gripping. I enjoyed it immensely. I've already bought the second one so that I can read it very soon. If you're looking for a fast paced, fun, it is relatively lighthearted, so middle grade lighthearted fantasy. This is a really good book. I read this in like 2 days. It didn't take me long at all to finish this because it's just so gripping, and you fly through it because you're like, oh no, what's going to happen next? And so yeah, if you're looking for something like that, this is a really fun book. The next book I read was actually a sequel to a book that I read either in November or December. And that is The Last of August by Brittany Cavallaro. I have fallen in love with this series, and I understand that it has some tropes in it that might be kind of cliche. Not this genre is not going to like be for everyone. This falls into the detective genre for sure. It is a middle grade story. Well, I would say young adult. It has young adult themes. It's not middle grade. This is a young adult detective story. It follows Charlotte Holmes, who is the descendant of Sherlock Holmes, and her best friend Jamie Watson, who is the descendant of Watson from the old stories. This is a continuation of what was going on in the first book. You don't have to read this. They stand alone. Each story stands alone. So this story picks up where it left off in the last book. And I was expecting this to be a bit more lighthearted than it was. The ending actually made me cry. The character building for Charlotte and Jamie is excellent, but they are the main characters. And you have some side characters who get decent character development, but then you have a couple that just kind of fall by the wayside. And so overall, I really enjoy the story, but if you're looking for hints for what's going to happen toward the end of the story, you can kind of pick that up. I was taken aback. I thought that I had it figured out what was going on, and I was completely wrong. The ending did shock me as far as like the actual mystery portion of it, and then it shocked me doubly, and then I cried. And so yeah, this book is really good. If you have read A Study in Charlotte and you're interested in the detective genre and you want to continue on with their story, this is really good. If you're wanting to read this series, I just recommend starting with the first one and reading them in order, just because that first book has some information in it that might be kind of key to understanding their characters. I rated this 5 stars. I really loved it, despite any tropes or flaws that it may have had, but that's purely on my enjoyment because I am a huge fan of detective stories. The next book that I picked up was Green Glass House by Kate Milford. I could not stop reading this once I started. This is amazing. This book has so many amazing themes in it. It covers family and ancestry and adoption, and it covers like learning how to fit in whenever you don't necessarily think that you do, and it covers friendship and loyalty, and this book was just amazing. So it starts out with a boy who's 12 years old. His name's Milo, and he lives in the Smuggler's Inn, which is Green Glass House. And he and his family are getting ready for Christmas and the holidays, and all of a sudden they have guests, and they don't usually have guests at this time of the year, so it's very out of place. And they have several people show up, and then there are some things stolen, and they get wrapped up in this mystery that they're not really sure why everybody's there at this time of the year, at least the odd characters that are there. I love the characterization. The characters in this story are so unique, and they're just so fun to read about. And the story itself was so captivating. I love reading in Milo's point of view. I love the fact that the family was very trusting of their son. They never doubted him, and I think that that is so important. I love the setting, just the fact that it's a smuggler's inn and that there's these people that are maybe morally gray people, and they are making friends and you're learning about them, and then the whole mystery, and then there's some aspects of D&D in this, and I found the whole entire thing to be wonderful, and I rated it 5 stars, and I cannot wait to finish reading all of the books in this series, because I almost picked it back up to read it again as soon as I put it down because I loved it so much. So this is a wonderful middle grade book. I highly recommend it. I also read Goblin Market by Christina Rosetti. This is a long poem, and it follows 2 sisters who are down by, I believe it's like a little stream, and they see goblins, and the one sister says, "Oh no, don't do that. Don't eat anything that you can get from them because the goblins have all of this amazing looking fruit." And the other sister is very tempted by these goblins and their fruit, and it's just the story of what happens with these sisters and the goblin men down by the stream. And I know that it is allegorical to lust, I believe it was. So it was just, I love the ties that you can make from it. That it had so much that you could take away from it, and so many different ways that you could interpret the poem. And I think that if you're looking for a really good poem to analyze, check this one out, because it's fun to read because it's about goblins and the goblin market, and these 2 sisters and what happens with the goblin market. But it's also interesting to see it as a tie-in for something in the real world, and something that some people may struggle with, and it's really well written. It's got a lot of beautiful imagery, so I gave it 5 stars. It's really wonderful. And the last book that I finished in January was Zen and the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury, and I have to say, I gave it 5 stars, obviously. I love Ray Bradbury. I love his writing. I love his style. I love his imagery. Ray Bradbury is, well, he was an amazing writer, and I don't think that I'm going to find a book or a story that he's written that I'm not going to enjoy, because I just love the way that he writes. This book specifically is a group of essays that discuss creativity, and it talks about how to be more productive with your creativity and how to make sure that you are getting the most out of you, and how to like really put your passion into what you're doing. And I think that it's super important, not just for writers, but for any kind of content creator out there, any kind of artist out there. If you are looking for inspirational words, if you're looking for some advice from somebody who was in the field of being creative his whole entire life, look to Ray Bradbury's book, because it was so good. And it's a very short read. If you listen to the audiobook, it's only 3 hours long, and it is so well worth it. I listened to the audiobook, but I immediately ordered myself a copy of the physical book once I had started reading it. That way I can get a copy and annotate it, because it's amazing, and I want to make sure that I get as much from it as I possibly can. So if you're looking for a nonfiction work that is just inspirational and full of I don't know how the man puts imagery into everything that he does, but he is so good at just making these beautiful images in your head. Please check out Zen and the Art of Writing by Ray Bradbury, because it's phenomenal. So these are all of the books that I read in the month of January. I feel like it was a fairly productive month. I'm trying to stay on track to make sure that I reach my goal for the end of the year. What did you read in the month of January that you really enjoyed? I'd love to talk about it down below. Or if you're interested in any of these books and you want to ask me about it, please drop me a comment. Until next time, guys, I'll see you later.